We're going to start out talking about Derek Carr's contract. He made some news this week talking to Catherine Terrell of ESPN. Kind of had a quote that got people fired up. I'm going to read it for you here. He said, quote, "I wouldn't take a pay cut. Yeah, I wouldn't do that, especially with what I put on tape. Would I restructure? Absolutely. I'll always help the team that way. But there's some things that you put out there that you earned. Even in some cases, it could be even worse. But I felt confident when I signed it that this would give the team the best flexibility at the time. But there's always a kind of respect as a quarterback. You're like, well, still, we're in that respectable lane. We're good, build the team. But yeah, I wouldn't take anything less to do this. It's hard enough putting our bodies through it, and you're eventually trying to get everything you can for your family for it." Let's start there. What do we make of that quote?
Well, I believe him. I mean, I theorized on whether a pay cut would be a possibility last week when I wrote about Carr's situation, and one of the reasons I thought it might not be is because of how his Raiders situation ended, which was, kind of a bitter divorce where he didn't think that team was respecting him enough, and he came to New Orleans wanting more respect. So asking a guy to take a pay cut obviously comes with a lack of respect every once in a while. I wonder, though, that he's right. We've said this a million times. I think Derek Carr is being paid in the correct tier that he's in. It's what Baker Mayfield's contract was like before he proved himself again this year in Tampa. It's like around where Geno Smith's contract is. It's like 16th, 17th among veterans in the NFL, and there's all those rookie deals, so it's really outside of the top 20. He deserves to want and feel like he earns that level of contract. The problem is, though, if the Saints decide to cut him, he's not getting $40 million from another team next year. He's just not. There's not enough teams that need quarterbacks. He's right on that cusp. There's probably about 2 or 3 teams that'll sign a veteran this year. He's going to be out there with Kirk Cousins, maybe Sam Darnold, maybe Russell Wilson. He's not going to get $40 million. So I would like to think that the biggest win-win in all of this would be that he actually would take a pay cut, and that the Saints would keep him at $15 million instead of $40 million. It just seems like that's really, really unrealistic, and then he'll go and make $15 million somewhere else. Unfortunately, that's the way it works sometimes. But we've said it a million times, and we can talk about all the salary ramifications. But I'm curious to hear your opinion on this. I'm fine with if the Steelers want to sign Carr for $40 million, if the 49ers wanted to not pay Brock Purdy and sign Carr for $40 million, I think he could win in those places. I just don't want the Saints to pay anybody $40 million this year because of where their roster's at and because of where their salary cap's at.
They could spend $40 million on someone better than Carr in my book. And I'd be cool with that and then fill out the roster.
If somebody was really better than Carr, but I wouldn't do it for Sam Darnold. I wouldn't do it for Russell Wilson. I wouldn't do it for Kirk Cousins. I wouldn't do it for Baker. I'd do it for Mahomes
for the right quarterback, go all in around somebody, which they haven't done. Can I go on my soapbox for a second before we get into the Carr thing? We have to stop. That's me. Do we have
a soapbox in here? Go get a soapbox.
We have to stop doing the restructuring is helping the team narrative. It does not help the team. Okay. Nobody's doing the team a favor. You're getting the same exact money when you do a restructure. It isn't, oh man, he did something to altruistic to his future to help the team. If you restructure your contract, you are getting the same amount of money, oftentimes in a lump sum, which allows you to then go invest it or whatever. B, if it's not guaranteed money already, it becomes guaranteed. It is a benefit to you, and you get the same money. And in the Saints case, and specifically in Derek Carr's case, there is Section 6 in his contract, which reads automatic conversions. Player and club agree that on one or more occasions at any time during the duration of this contract, club shall have the right, but not the obligation to, 1, convert any portion of the player's paragraph 5 salary set forth in the contract. That's what we call the base salary. And into signing bonus, or 2, convert any portion of all of the roster bonus, if any, set forth in this contract into signing bonus. If club exercises its right to convert such paragraph 5 salary and or roster bonuses as provided herein, club shall use the same form of signing bonus addendum language as stated in the contract, except that 1, such converted paragraph 5 salary shall be payable in equal weekly installments concurrent with paragraph 5 salary, and so on and so forth. Basically, in layman's terms, what that says is he's already agreed to convert anything that would be restructured. And from Derek's point of view, if they restructure the contract, absolutely nothing changes because he's getting the payments in the same exact schedule that he's already agreed to get them in. Sometimes when you do it, it turns it into a signing bonus, and the signing bonus gets paid out up front. This is already saying that it'd be done in weekly installments as set forth on the same schedule as the base salary. So like it does nothing. Like, and this isn't about Derek. This is more us in the media thing that we'll be like, well, oh, he's like helping the team. It doesn't.
What a teammate!
It doesn't.
He should win Man of the Year.
He isn't doing anything. The team, they're just like, yo, we're gonna restructure this. Your money's guaranteed, and you might get a lump sum, but it's guaranteed no matter what. And all right, cool. Two, going to the Carr thing. Like, I don't blame him for saying I'm not taking a pay cut. Like, you agreed to a contract, and if you're on one side of the contract and you're like, no, they're gonna honor it or they're gonna fire me, cool, that's fine. That's your prerogative. I didn't necessarily love the quote in that it's like, well, check the tape. Well, like, bro, like, I agree you had a better season than most people think, but it's not out of the question to say like, hey, Derek, you're making 40, kind of feels like you're worth a little bit less than that. Like, that's not an outrageous sentiment at all. Like, in saying that is like, just so, just do the Cam Jordan thing. If I'm Derek's PR person, like, I don't really have a problem with like his point of view at all. But if I was his PR person, I'd be like, yo, if they ask you this, and to the behind the scenes on this story is that like Kat didn't even ask him if he'd be willing to take a pay cut. Like, he just brought it up himself. Like, he volunteered that information. Must be aware that the narrative's out there. But if I was Derek's PR guy, I would just be like, hey, just say like, I'm going to leave it to my agent.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Hey, if they approach me, like, yeah, I let my agent handle my contracts. I'm going to let them handle that. And, we'll go from there. Like, just don't, like, there's no value in being like, no, I'm not doing this. But we've seen how Derek operates, and like, I think he'd force a cut before he takes a pay cut.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I agree. Look, and I agree that that's probably what Carr's PR person should tell him. But look, Carr has entered stick up for himself mode probably about 6 years before he even got to New Orleans. Like, this has been a long time for him where like there's a narrative about him, and he takes it personal, as he probably should. So if he wants to stick up for himself and defend himself, I mean, as we said, he said he was playing the best football of his career. He's got a passer rating of like 100 with the Saints, and everybody acts like, he's the biggest disaster they've ever seen. So I understand him defending himself, fighting back against the narrative. But the reality is just that, it's $40 million is an awful, awful lot to pay for anyone in his tier, and $40 million, and I think there's 29 teams that should be paying that ahead of the Saints. The Saints are the last team that should be paying any quarterback in that tier. Like I said, I mean, I don't think the Saints should trade for Baker Mayfield. I don't think the Saints should sign Sam Darnold, and these are guys who are being celebrated this year.
Who are the three after the Saints?
Other teams that should not want.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, obviously there's teams who already have rookie quarterbacks. They shouldn't do it. But like, if you're just like, I don't think the Tennessee Titans should go out and pay $40 million for Carr, because they're not going to win yet.
Yeah.
Like, he's kind of like the last piece to me. But really, you kind of have to be in salary cap hell to also be the Saints. You have to be not ready to win, and you need to be $80 million over the cap. So I guess the Saints are the only team that falls into that category.
That's the thing. The team needs to be built. Like, he's the guy that comes in after like, what's Sam Darnold if you take away Justin Jefferson? He's probably not 2024 Sam Darnold. You take away Justin Jefferson. What's Baker Mayfield if you take away Mike Evans? Like, he's probably not that. Like, Derek Carr's a guy that...
Goff is a great example.
Yeah,
like,
I
mean, the ideal circumstances in Detroit.
Yeah, all built around him. Great play caller.
Purdy in San Francisco. Yeah. Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, like, he's got a little bit less help, but it's a decent team. But like, if you take the best receiver in the league away from Sam Darnold, like, he's not someone that anyone's hyping up. Like, Derek Carr is someone that goes in after you have like your team built and you have everything around him. It's kind of like, I don't know. Like, it's paying full price for something and then not having all the pieces around it. It's like renting a car with a bad alternator, and it's just like, well, like, good luck, but you still got to pay full price for it. But like, no, you got to fix the alternator if you want to get down the road with them. It's not the right situation for him. If you aren't going to build it out around him, it's not it. But I don't think Derek Carr is worth $40 million for any team in the NFL. He's not a $40 million quarterback because he needs all this help. Like, I understand the idea of it at the time. Quarterback insecurity probably makes you kind of do some things. It kind of makes the Browns pay Deshaun Watson. It makes the Saints get in those conversations. It makes Atlanta get in those conversations. It makes Atlanta sign Kirk Cousins and draft Michael Penix, and one of the two is going to work. And they might have figured it out if the season's any preview. But it was a bad decision. He's not worth $40 million, and like, I understand if you pay him it because the contract is what it is, and it's very hard to hit the escape clause on it and still have a competitive team. But that doesn't mean that you should keep him. Like the ideal scenario is to get him out of here or get him on, 30 million, 25 million. That's why I think it's
and I don't even agree necessarily that it was a bad decision. Like I think I was even more skeptical of it than you at the time. I remember we had like this long argument. Garoppolo was kind of a high profile free agent at the time. I'm like, God, I don't want to see the Saints spend all that money on a quarterback. But I got it in 23. And I'm reading from an article that I'm going to publish soon. But at that time, they still had Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, Ryan Ramczyk, Taysom Hill, Marshawn Lattimore, Demario Davis, Cam Jordan, Tyrann Mathieu, forming the nucleus of a strong team. So at the time when they did it, at least I understood the logic behind it. They don't have that nucleus anymore. They're in worse salary cap shape now. And he cost $10 million more. He was $30 million each of the last 2 years. Now it bumps up to $40 million. It's time to admit that, hey, that was worth trying then. It's not worth trying now.
Yeah. I guess more what I'm saying though is like, I got it at the time, but like when you have the hindsight, like you wish someone would have had the foresight in the moment to maybe say like, okay, let's have a way to get out of this a little bit sooner. Yeah. We're going to try to see if we can keep our old core together, and then it's time to move on. But like it's just run its course to me. And the wild thing is though, is I don't think it's impossible for them to have an offseason which would allow them to win this terrible division with him as their quarterback. Right. I don't think that's impossible, but I don't think it's a noble cause anymore.
Right.
I don't think it's a noble cause anymore. So,
the other part of this conversation is I think it's the biggest like I don't know if cheat code's the right word, but like there's a word I used before, but disparity, whatever it is, in NFL quarterback salaries is the tier right below him is free. Like Justin Fields can be free. Russell Wilson might be really cheap. Jimmy Garoppolo will cost $5 million this year. So when you look at what costs $40 million and what costs $5 million, that makes it even more. Like if all those guys cost 35 and then 30 and then 25 and then 20, okay, maybe. But those guys cost 1/8 as much as he costs.
And he's probably better than Jimmy, but he's not $35 million.
8 times better than Jimmy, yes.
And just to answer the question that's on the screen or in the title of the show or whatever, breaking down Derek Carr's contract, he is currently on the books at a $51 million cap number this year, $30 million base salary. So if they were to restructure it, it'd be that $30 million. If you were to just cut him outright today, you have $50 million in dead cap space. You would save $1.3 million. You get $1.3 million back to go invest in your next quarterback.
But as I've pointed out a million times, the difference is if you keep him, it's $50 million this year and $30 million next year. If you cut him, it's $50 million this year and none next year. That is a significant difference if you're thinking long term.
I think the math that they have to do is that if you keep him this year, you're basically there's no relief. If you cut it, you're spending the money for a player who's not here. If you cut him a year from now, it ends up being $28 million. So like they have to do the arithmetic on like how to allocate those assets over a 2-year window. And I think the one thing that people don't really add into it ever too is then there's the cost of replacing him on top of it, which becomes part of the bigger balloon. But yeah, you cut him now, you move on, go be ass and have the pick.
And then you really have real relief in 26. The category I put this under is Derek Carr / catching up on the cap / actually tanking. You're kind of making all three of those decisions at once. You have to be bad for a year if you're willing to do this, because not only do you lose your quarterback, that I do think is 2 or 3 wins better than the alternatives, if he plays a full healthy season, but you're also limiting your ability to spend money on anyone else. You probably can't keep Paulson Adebo. You probably can't sign any upgrades anywhere else. You probably can't keep Juwan Johnson. You probably can't spend $10 million on a different quarterback. So if you do cut Derek Carr, it means you're kind of taking the year off.
Yeah. And before we move on though, like I am going to make one point though. Like I don't think it's impossible. Like while I think it's time to do that, I don't think it's impossible for us to be sitting here in October if they hire the right coach that brings in the right culture and just kind of gets them on a path that we aren't sitting here in October and being like that. Oh, like what.
They're 5-6.
Yeah. Oh, like can they win? Can they beat the Bucs out for the South title? I don't think it's impossible.
Not impossible. The hard part is, I would do it. I would switch from Carr to Rattler. It would lower their Vegas number from 7.5 wins to 5.5 wins or whatever. But they could beat the odds. The bigger problem is the idea that they can't spend They would have to spend $0 in free agency. That they can't even add like 3 or 4. They can't add a Nathan Shepard and a Foster Moreau.
Let me ask
what I mean?
Like, I'm going to go around the room with this one too.
Yeah.
Like if he's owed $80 million over the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Cash is base salary. They still got to pay out $80 million of actual cash.
90,
yeah, whatever.
90.
The base salary,
it's 50
with the roster bonus. Yeah. They got to pay that out $90 million over the next 2 years. Cash.
Yeah.
If they win the next 2 NFC South titles, is he worth $90 million?
Sure. I'd take 2 NFC South titles.
B says no. You are paying $90 million for 2 NFC South titles?
No.
Just the NFC South title.
You're hosting a first-round playoff game.
They can't hear you, so let's just get a yes or no.
B gave a big thumbs down. He's torn. He's conflicted.
Devin says yes. Joe says no.
Okay, but look,
I say yeah.
Let me make a comparison that we just made over
But that's
text.
the only way it's worth it.
Yeah. Let me make a comparison that we just made over text. Kevin and I, if you listen to the Members Only podcast, we've argued over this. He does not agree with me on this. The last 2 years, Tampa Bay and New Orleans were in like identical cap situations. Tampa Bay also decided to promote Todd Bowles to head coach, very similar to promoting Dennis Allen to head coach. They signed Baker Mayfield. The Saints signed Derek Carr. They kept Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Levante David instead of totally rebuilding. They were picked to finish last in the NFC South, but they went 9-8 last year and won a playoff game. They went 10-7 this year. They won the NFC South again. And we saw these tweets about people should consider Jason Licht for Executive of the Year. He's so underrated. That easily could have been what happened in the Saints. It could have gone 9-8 and won the NFC South last year, 10-7 and won the NFC South last year. He doesn't think Kevin's argument is that's not a noble goal. I would say that's a noble goal. That would have been successful.
I'll say this: like I think if you win the next 2, paying Derek's worth it. But if you give me the choice of where I kind of know the ceiling is on that, or where I know the ceilings is on the Bucs, and if you say at this point.
Yeah.
Like if you asked me this question, I don't even know if last year my answer would have been the same, but at this point I would say probably just let me say something else.
Well, the difference is 2 years ago, I believe that was realistic. I saw a 10-win team. As I said, that Michael Thomas and Ryan Ramczyk were still a part of the thinking when they signed Derek Carr, not to mention all DeMario and Cam and Alvin being 2 years younger. I don't see it now. I don't see a path to 10 wins. I used to see a path to 10 wins. I don't see it anymore, and that's the difference.
That's why. I mean, I agreed with their moves at the time, because I thought they would actually like be winning 10 games, and they were close, but it just didn't. It's just not worth it. Like you have one more win to last year's total. Like,
yeah,
man, who cares? Like.